Well, good evening, everybody. I'm trying something a little new tonight. Hopefully, gonna spend some time working on taking this Primaris Space Marine that I guess spent a bunch of time with him converting him back when the Primaris were first released in, I guess, Dark Imperium, or is that what it was called? Whatever. And this, I guess, I remember we got this Primaris Marine like maybe a little before they were actually released in the US. And at the time, I converting went about converting his, I guess, what they call his bolt rifle into something that was hopefully a little better looking than the official one. Hey Johnny, nice to have you here. And so, based on some talk from our last stream, the thought was I'd try and paint this Space Marine. But think more on that. I decided if I really wanted to be happy with the model, I wanted to do a little more conversion work on him to make him look more like a normal Space Marine, so he could be used in all manner of Ink 28 stuff, and I wouldn't feel bad about it. So that's what I thought I'd work on tonight. The primary thing that I need to do is work on his legs. Try and remove some of these little bulges at his ankles, and I guess also the little lip at the knee pad. Some of these Primaris intercessors and stuff also have these like little armor plates on their waist, more akin to what you'd see on some of like the Terminator assault squads and stuff like that. I haven't decided if I want to remove those or not. At this point, I'm almost thinking that I might cut some of those off, as they would give me more room to add other equipment and stuff like that on the side of the model. Because as it is, that adds a lot of height to the model that if you would want to add other stuff to their side, it looks kind of awkward. But we'll see what happens once I get further in with the conversion. So how are you doing, Johnny? What are you up to tonight? So yeah, first, even know how I want to go about removing some of these. I typically would just use an Exacto knife, but we'll see. I probably could actually try and use this little razor saw too. Let's see how it works. At this point, despite having the razor saw, I really haven't used it a whole lot yet. Primarily because when I got it, I was largely just painting. Wow. It does a pretty nice job. Yeah, I feel like these little razor saws could do a lot. If you wanted to remove something and not just like fucking destroy it, which you'd certainly destroy any of that with a razor or an Exacto knife. Oh, cool. Oh, so you did track down one of the saws? That's good. Yeah, at this point I still haven't really used it too much, but the little that I've used it, I've been pretty impressed with them. They're certainly, since the blade itself is so thin, It does a really nice job. Oh, you ordered one. Okay, good. Um, like, so I don't. It might be a little hard to see here, but like there, you can kind of see the little cut I've been making on the ankle here, and so it's really rather thin on even a model of this size. So it would work really well if you did actually want to save a component on the model. But in this case, what I'm removing, it doesn't matter that much, and anything that I do cut off, I'll regardless have to go in and do some sculpting. Oh yeah, so that actually worked pretty well. Yeah, so I just cut that piece off. Now I can probably cut off a little more at the top here and then just smooth the rest out with Exacto blade. Yeah, it's super tiny. Like the Tamiya saw that I have is at least 2 times as thick with what at least whatever blade. I don't know what blade this is, but it's pretty tiny. Also doesn't seem as if the teeth get that filled up with plastic pieces and stuff, so it's like still pretty easy to continue cutting. But I feel in many regards it will also, depending on what you're doing, will allow you to get a much straighter cut than what, say, I normally would have would have done with an Exacto knife. And I mean, you can still do really well with an Exacto knife, but it's just you have to be a lot more careful, and typically you have to go in stages and slowly shave more and more off of the model until you're happy. Pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now I'll go back in with the Exacto knife and kind of trim off a little more that I wasn't able to get off with the saw. But so with this model, when I first went about just trimming and cleaning up the different parts of the model, I actually remember we went about and I trimmed out a lot of like the undercuts and other regions of the model, that since it was all cast as like one, only a few larger pieces, there are a bunch that kind of look bad, particularly in the legs. Like, well, there's not a whole lot you can do. Like, for instance, here in the inner part of the leg, I guess the seam between the back part of the armor and that front piece isn't doesn't look super good. With the actual multi-part Primaris models, they largely got around that by making the front piece just a separate piece that you glued on the back. And while that looks better, unfortunately, like the undercuts and stuff on the multi-part ones on their like butt looks a lot worse. So like these ones here, like they actually sculpted in all of like the rubberized coverings for their butt, which I thought looked really good. And on the multi-part plastic ones, all of that detail's kind of ruined. So remember, that was something I joked around a lot about with my brother as hell. The new multi-part plastic ones, while they look pretty good, not all of the detailing and stuff was as good as even the ones you'd find in, guess it was Dark Imperium. Are you still, Johnny, are you still painting your Inquisitor? Okay. OSL lighting for his Halo, that's cool. Earlier in the day, I also did a little painting. I'm getting closer and closer to being finished with Slambo, the little Chaos Warrior. I was hoping I would have had him done by now, but the horns. I've been working on painting the horns, and they've taken an inordinate amount of time. Okay, so you're almost finished. Are you? I guess I wasn't paying enough attention to the chat. Almost finished. Is that with your Inquisitor, or was that in reference to Slambo? But here I can bring him out to show you. Okay. But yeah, so I've been painting the texture on the horns. And it's been just a lot of slow, painstaking work to get all the transitions and stuff to look okay, and to make sure all the texturing and stuff that I do, all the lines painted, are pretty neat. But once, I still have a few more highlights to do, but once that's done, there's only a few more like detail work to do, and then I'll be finished. Then it'll be on to the next thing. Okay, you're almost done with your Inquisitor. That's good. Yeah, I mean, some of the like work in progress pictures you've had in your stories and stuff, have certainly, they certainly look good, and it looks as if he's very far along. Oh. Yeah. Getting like the different finishes and stuff right. Like I, for one, like largely, I really don't like glossy finishes. And I mean, I guess maybe that's not entirely accurate, but like glossy finishes can look really good on certain things, but most of the time, most of the things I feel like I'm painting, I don't really feel like they need to be glossy. Oh, yeah, so I think Slambo looking a little wet. I think some of that just has to do with, since it's a metallic model and based on where the lighting the lighting is, it's kind of hard to see. And I think some of the paint, particularly on the horns, like I think I'm going to have to put a a coat or two of like a matte varnish or something on it, because yeah, at this point it looks a little glossier than what I'd really like. Thanks. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the horns. I feel only like a few more colors, like a few lighter colors to get closer to like white is what I need to do, and then I'll say that it's finished. Yeah, for years, for all the stuff that I did with converting, like I did nearly everything with an Exacto knife. Oh, yeah, I sort of, with like the horns and stuff, they can look pretty good if it's just a blend of colors, but I think the textured ones are certainly a little more interesting to look at with the horns. And particularly, like, I think in the past, when I used to paint horns, I would often have it get darker towards like the head or the helmet. But then, yeah, like after seeing some other people how they painted the stuff, they often get lighter towards like the focal point or the head of the model to kind of accentuate the model's face, which I thought was an interesting idea, and I think kind of does do a nice job of highlighting that. So I wanted to experiment with that on Slambo and see what it looked like. Another thing that I more recently started using, like Tamiya, they make these like little sanding pads of different like grit sandpaper, and they're actually pretty nice. Like you can, certain things depending on where seam lines and stuff are, like you can get a really nice looking, like you can get most of the seam line off with an Exacto knife, but one of the little sanding pads helps a lot with getting it looking even better. But yeah, so these little sanding pads are pretty nice. They're also a little, I feel you can pretty easily, they're like on like little foam pieces. You can pretty easily cut like little strips of them off, and then it's like easier to handle them. But they have tons of different grits that can get pretty fine. Like this one here is 1500 grit, and then I have from 400, 600, 1000, and then they even go up to as high as like, this one I have is 3000, which can almost work more for just like polishing pieces. Yeah, so I've never I've not found a place to buy any of the sanding sticks. I feel like I could pretty easily order them online. But at this point I haven't done it. But I think they could be pretty nice and would be easier to control some of what you're doing. But actually I'm pretty happy with the edge that I've created there. Like, I've actually removed, at least for this upper armor plate, like I might not even have to do anything more on that. Okay, they have Hobby Lobby. I imagine I could find them. I just haven't looked. But yeah, so that actually looks pretty good. The inner armor plate here, it's sort of not molded properly as well, but that I'll have to do some sculpting to make it look a little better. But even still, it looks pretty good. Do a little more work on this side. Then I'll have to get rid of the circular thing on the inside armor plate. That might be a little harder to do. Be a little harder to get at. Yeah, I think that'll actually just be easier to... better than the Buzz Lightyear boots. Yeah, that's actually true. I hadn't really thought much about that, but they do kind of have that appearance. I feel like they very much, like, as soon as you see those very much, like, your mind's drawn back to, like, oh, it's just a Primaris Marine, which I feel is fine, but it'd be better to get rid of them. I imagine on the multi-part ones, I feel it would be even easier to remove them. Yeah, my shoes are attached. Yeah. Yeah, particularly the undercuts on this part of the leg, the inside, don't look very good. Clown, yeah, they do look like clown shoes. I feel most GW models, they have huge feet. It looks like they're wearing clown shoes. Like, I feel, while I really love, like, the Necromunda Caldor models, like, and they're used everywhere, I really wish their feet weren't so big. Like, some of them literally look like their feet are actually like water balloons. Which I, like, can't stand. And then on top of that, they're huge. I should look at, like, the normal baseball tactical squads. What do the bottom of their legs even look like? Let's actually pull some out and look. Okay, so most of them just don't have they don't have like an additional armor plate on the front. It just continues around the back, but I feel in this case having just an additional plate on the front is fine. I mean, yeah, the Caldor, a lot of them, half of them are barefoot, and then their feet are huge. And like, they're used in conversions everywhere because they're cool, and just that's the biggest thing that I think if I were to convert something with them, the first thing that I would do is I would probably just cut their feet off entirely. And I guess the one Sister of Sigmar that I had made, which was heavily based off one of those models, I largely just cut down the majority of the foot and then resculpted the boots. I feel I probably cut away more than half of the plastic. A worthy sacrifice. Yes, that actually looks pretty good. Let's go to the other leg. Yeah, it's working pretty well. I feel the little sculpting that I'll do on this, like once I finish trimming away all this stuff, I'll probably use milliput to sculpt the rest of the small corrections and fixes to the armor. I find like milliput works really well for sculpting armor plating and stuff, since you can just add a bit of water to it and get a really smooth finish on it before it hardens. And then even if you don't think it's perfect by the end, it's really easy to sand then too. Yeah. Second one's almost removed. Yeah. Guess we'll do the rest with an Exacto knife. I can cut a little more off it. Guess for the knee pads, this like little armor plating, the little rim at the top is probably going to be kind of a pain to remove. Though I guess if I'm going to do some sculpting, I may as well just... So I'll have to sculpt it anyway. Don't necessarily have to be as accurate with it because I can just correct any mistakes with the actual sculpting. Wonder if these are the same. Yeah, they're pretty good. Yeah, well, it's remarkably easy to make some of these cuts with a little saw. It then requires them a lot less work trying to get everything straight and looking nice. Yes, I don't know if I'd want to do this on a whole army of Marines, but I guess I would never make a whole army, so it's fine. But I guess it is overall pretty straightforward to do. I feel a lot of it, depending if you're careful, you could do most of it without having to do too much sculpting. But even still. I feel this is a part of like the conversions. Like if you do this on a bunch of the models, I feel most people looking at the model wouldn't even realize that they were removed. Unless they like went looking. I guess if you say you were wanting it to be like a true scale Space Marine and not a Primaris Marine, then some people might go and look to see what changes you made. So I know particularly some people have very strong opinions about converting true scale Space Marines, particularly with like Horus Heresy Marines and stuff like that. That if you keep a lot of the Primaris detailing, and I see some of that, like it takes away from like a lot of what makes the Horus Heresy memorable and stuff, at least in some people's minds, are the actual older armor variants and stuff, and a lot of them are very distinct. I know talking with in some of the streams and stuff we've had before, he has a bunch of Primaris Space Marines that has been working on converting into, I think, maybe like Chaos Space Marines, and I remember talking to him about how he should try and remove these like this detailing and stuff from the ankles of at least some of the models, and I don't know if he's taken to doing any of it yet. I'll have to try and talk to him about it and tell him my experiences. it is kind of scary how offended some people can get, and like I feel like I'm more under the impression like you can do whatever you want. And even in like the Horus Heresy and stuff, like you'd think there would be so many different armor marks and variations, and them taking pieces from here and there that like I could easily imagine someone had armor that had some of these extra frills and other stuff. So like saying that it doesn't fit with the theme or something, I feel is kind of weird. I sort of felt like one of the things that I always liked about the Warhammer 40,000 universe and stuff in general was the notion that the galaxy and stuff was large enough that you could kind of just do your own thing and it would it would be reasonable. And then I guess on top of that, with the Horus Heresy stuff as well, like I mean, I feel like if I were making a Horus Heresy army and I wanted to do it relatively quickly, I could not bring myself to use any of like the Horus Heresy like standard Marine sculpts because they're just so bad. Like their anatomy is so bad. I would much rather use a Primaris Marine and just like do a few modifications of like the head, backpack, etc. and stuff like that because it would still look so much better. Would still look so much better than all that Forge World junk. Yeah. Because I feel like most of those Horse Heresy models, unless you're willing to cut apart the body and extend their torso, like they look so comical. Like I don't even understand why you'd want them. That looks pretty good. You just did your first big COVID purchase. What's that? Found a weird China cast place. Huh. I mean, I feel like a lot of the China cast stuff, like depending on, particularly with like different Forge World stuff and other models, like you can't even get most of the stuff anymore. Um, I don't think currently I've purchased, or I've not knowingly purchased China cast stuff. But for some of this type of stuff, like if it's the only way you can get it, like whatever. And it's interesting, like some of the stuff it could even there's a chance it could even be cast better than like some of the original models. Yeah, man, it's interesting. Me, like, sitting here, working on this stream, working on this model, this would not make a good YouTube video. Like, I feel if I'd really want, I'd have to heavily edit it, like, talk very vaguely about what I was gonna do, show some of it, and then just cut to, like, the finished thing. Because for most of this stuff, so much time is spent on just kind of getting that final finish that isn't necessarily that interesting to watch. Also interesting considering like how you'd think some of these armor platings and stuff would actually like merge together, if they would how they would actually work. Like some of the detailing in here I could potentially change a little bit. Yeah, I feel editing would be key. Yeah. But I guess in this case, now that I have a better setup to do stuff like this, I feel, at least in some instances for some of the projects, like if I'm doing it, I may as well at least stream some of it. So I can talk to people like you. Hopefully the OSL work's going well. Oh yeah. Colonel, his videos are good. Yeah, and I feel like for a lot of the stuff, the more you do it, you get a better sense of like what the inherent issues and problems are and ways to kind of improve them and get past them. But I feel having more content videos showing people doing how to do different conversions and stuff, I feel could be useful. To give people kind of a sense, like particularly if they've not done a lot of it before, like kind of the process people go through and how they go through and do some of the stuff, because depending on the final product, oftentimes it can be pretty hard to actually see what was done and get a sense of like, oh, if I'd want to try something similar, like where to even start. I'm sort of considering for this Marine to give him like one of the little pointed beaky helmets. It's like I feel like you don't typically see them too often nowadays, particularly on like the true scale Primaris-esque Marines. I feel for this model he has a pretty high collar. I might have to remove some of that to get it to actually fit. Actually, one thing, so I got out one of the Sister of Battle, one of the new Sister of Battle bolters to kind of see to see what it looks like compared to one of these Primaris Marines. It's like with converting, even coming back to an internet age, it was like just a matter of searches, search, Kung Fu. Yeah, and so these sister battle bolters, like, they're still huge, but they're a little bit smaller than. Actually, I wonder, do I have a Space Marine bolter anywhere? Let me get one of them. So yeah, they're not like, they are a little smaller than normal Space Marine bolters, not by a huge margin, but they are a little. They're also slightly thinner, I think, and so I feel like they would actually work with a Space Marine quite well. So I sort of feel like, yeah, if you wanted to do a relatively some quick conversions and give Space Marines like the bolter sub carbine type looks, just giving one of the sister battle ones would work pretty well. I almost feel like, yeah, some of the sculpted hands would kind of be a pain, but I feel like some of them it wouldn't be too hard to remove. And then I guess trying to get the Marine hands to work with them, I don't quite know it would be the best thing to do. And maybe, yeah, just sculpt the hands. That might be what you. That would probably be. That would look the best, I feel, in the end. In the newer like Enforcer, from those like Necromunda Enforcers, their bolters look pretty good too, and they're also pretty small. So I had done some work with one. Yeah, you could use this. So these bolters for the Enforcers, I feel, are even better. They're even a little smaller than the sister battle ones. They're not quite as tall. They're shorter as well. The magazines are better, and like it's really easy to like take one of the Vans SAR like stalks on their weapons and like add it to the back, and you have a pretty nice looking stalked bolter that still looks pretty big and meaty. And in many regards, like with that stalk on, it's not really that. It's about as big as some of the normal Space Marine weapons, so like it actually, I feel like that works pretty well. And I feel like people might not even complain that like, oh, that's too small or whatnot. So that's something else that I think would be interesting to look more into, and I feel could work really well. But like the bolter that I converted for him, was largely just cutting down the Primaris bolt rifle. So like it's pretty big. It's a lot. Like yeah, it's a big weapon. And then I have the little folding stock for it, which I have the little hinge here that I still have to I need to glue this on. So then with the stock itself, it's even larger. All right. Back to trimming the legs. What paint are you using, Johnny? Are you using anything in particular? Like, what paints have you used mostly for the Inquisitor, or has it been like a whole collection of different things? I'm sort of thinking now that for this Marine, I might actually paint him as an iron snake, and then he'd be mostly silver, which would actually probably be pretty easy to do. Okay. For Slambo, for him, this was like one of the first models that I really tried doing like OS, like zenithal highlighting. And for the model, I first sprayed it black, and then I used the airbrush to apply like a white coat on top of that, not giving it full coverage. In this case, instead of using like a standard like white acrylic, I use one of these, a white acrylic ink, and this I found it gives a much smoother effect than like a lot of the white acrylics like the Vallejo and GW and stuff makes. Even if you do a good job of thinning them, they still tend to dry really easily on the tip of the airbrush, and then it kind of gives like a sputtered look to it. And this largely removed all of that. Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing the completed product. Johnny, sometime we have to do a collaborative project. Would be fun. I could either build something for you or paint something or whatever. Like, it would be fun to do something like that. Yeah, see, I feel like I want to try and try experimenting more and more with like actually using the airbrush to get different effects. So the true, or the Primaris scaled Marine. He's pretty big. I feel I had just largely just finished making that when all of the Primaris stuff came out. um, and then nearly all the people, all of the efforts to do true scale Marines, it's like, well, we now have a much easier way to do all of this. Yeah, he's way bigger than a Primaris. I would actually, from one of those casts, I have to get back to this soon, but I was working on resculpting and positioning a new one of that Marine, changing him to have like more of a walking pose. I was also tweaking some of the stuff on the armor and his legs. Yeah, so I'll have to get back to that, hopefully sometime relatively soon. Hey Vox, nice to have you here. I don't know if I've been slowly working on taking this Primaris Space Marine that I had converted like a slightly smaller bolter for him. I'm in the process of removing all of the little ankle like circular pieces. So that's actually going pretty well. I'll have to do a little sculpting work to neaten up some of the transitions, but like overall a lot of them I think turned out pretty well. Yeah. I mean, once I get rid of them, then I'll have to trim off these stupid little lips on the top of his knee pads. But yeah, so it's going pretty well. And then I might also remove these like little armor plates on the side of the waist. And maybe because I think it would allow me to add other gear and stuff to the side of the model. Well, these models, these plastic ones, they do have some pouches and stuff on the back of them. It's still not a whole lot. But yeah, Vox, for this I've spent a little time using this little razor saw, and it's done a really good job of doing some of the initial work, cutting off the little ankle deals. Particularly with getting pretty straight cuts on some of the areas. Some of these like these Primaris Marines, some of their armor pieces, since they're only cast in a few pieces, are pretty wonky and sort of deformed, particularly on the inner side of the legs. Okay, yeah, it's good. Yeah, I feel I wish I had said razor saw along like years and years ago, because it would have made some of my efforts much easier. But better late than never. Okay, yeah, so most of those the anklet things are now removed. I'll have to clean them up a little more, but and do some sculpting. But overall, if I did spend a little more time trimming some of this stuff, you could probably even get away with sculpting it all, which is actually kind of nice. So if you were trying to do this for like a whole squad of Marines, I feel you could probably get good enough at it that you wouldn't have to worry about too much. Yeah, no, I feel like a lot of the different splicing together of different heads and pieces, the saw is so thin, it's like so much easier to cut something apart with this than it is to like try and brute force your way through even like a new and sharp Exacto blade. So yeah, I feel in the future it's going to really help with certain conversions. Now, if only I could use that saw to get rid of these little deals on the knees, which I probably actually could get rid of some of it. Yeah. I can cut off some. Even with the sort of awkward size of the blades and stuff, it's still pretty easy to do some of the work without really screwing up other parts of the model. Now these knees and stuff, I'll have to do some sculpting to make them look better. Yeah, no, they're really good. The saw's really good for cutting apart like different poles and staffs and stuff, and like actually not ruining the different surfaces. Well, so there I cut off a bunch of that at the knee. But I still need to get rid of some. Yeah, so that's another tip that I can tell you, which probably most of you already know this, but it helps to change your Exacto blade frequently. Because, wow, they always stay pretty sharp. It doesn't take too long for the blades to be noticeably duller, and it makes a lot of the stuff a lot harder to cut and potentially more dangerous, because you could slip with the blade and then just end up cutting yourself. Seems we're out of focus. No, yeah, that's actually true. I imagine, yeah, it actually would be pretty good, a little blade for like if you've green stuff something, like sawing through some of it without tearing the green stuff, because particularly if you just use straight green stuff, It's very prone to tearing. Okay, cut off a lot of that. So I guess I didn't really know what to expect for this stream. Like, I didn't necessarily know how long it would take me to do any of this stuff. I guess I should have expected most of it would take me a long time. So when did I start? So yeah, I've been going for like about an hour. And I've just removed the little ankle. Stuff on the ankles and some of the detailing on the keypad. Fox, have you had a chance to work more on your like drags? I know the last we talked to, I think you were doing some work on the feet of the one model after I had suggested that you could try and make them smaller. Which I almost feel like with a lot of my models, like every time I look at one, I think, man, I probably could have made their feet smaller. Like with all like the Imperial Guard and stuff that I've done, I largely used the smallest feet that I could find, which were for the Elysian like drop troops and stuff like that. And now still like looking at some of the models, it's like, man, I sort of wish I had just done even more work on that and made the boots even smaller. But I guess there's always work. There's always things you could improve or change. Okay, yeah, so I think you had sent some pictures last night, and I saw that they were that at least the shape was different. Which, yeah, a lot of the stuff on those Autor models, their feet are big, and they kind of look like water balloons. Which isn't great. Oh, hey, Meandering Shade.
Hey, can you hear me okay? Maybe.
I can hear you, Eric.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Oh, yeah, they're certainly better, Vox. They're a lot better.
How's the work on the Marine going?
It's going pretty well. Like um, if you're watching
Yeah, I am.
on Twitch, which it's now having trouble focusing, but I've largely removed most of the stuff from the ankles. It actually, using a combination of the little razor saw and the Exacto knife, like you can actually get it pretty nice where you won't even have to do that much
There's this the circle
sculpting.
thing.
Yeah, like the little
Oh
ankle.
yeah, because that's what I think Red Wet Skeleton was kind of talking about ways on going about that, and that was sort of my first thought that maybe you
Yeah,
could
I need to
actually
talk with
use.
him more about it. Because, yeah, I think you can do probably a lot of the work, particularly if you've done it a few times, where you wouldn't have to do too much sculpting later on.
What about the knee pad fins? They're probably more.
For these Dark Imperium few piece models like those, you can't really get rid of them
Easily.
that easily. Like I use the little razor saw to cut off some of the stuff, and then it's largely just been trying to trim down some of the other unwanted plastic in there.
Do you think you'll then use green stuff?
I'll have to do some sculpting to make the stuff look better. Yeah. I know I was. So Eric, what are your thoughts? These these armor plating pieces on like the side of like the waist. I'm sort of feeling like I'm going to remove them.
I feel if you want it to look the most like a traditional Space Marine, they should probably go. I mean, I guess it's kind of a shame that the model that you're working on has them, considering that not all of them do.
Yeah, like only a few of them do. I sort of feel like I can actually remove most of them, and then because I sort of feel like I'd like the model to have a sidearm, and so I took one of the little enforcer little holstered pistols, and I've started to cut it down to make it smaller. Because the little holstered enforcer pistols, while they look pretty good, they're way too big. I started cutting that down, and I'll use that to make like a thigh mounted holster.
Yeah.
But if I want that, like these, I think they need to go. And I can probably even get away with, I might not have to re-sculpt all of the detail in there if I just have enough like webbing and combat gear on the side. I'm actually, yeah, I've convinced myself I don't want them.
I feel, yeah, you'd be happier in the long run if you did it, even though it's. But so, as your general thought, like the saw has probably been a pretty nice thing to have.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, because the little I've worked doing all that stuff, just being able to remove large pieces in a unified
way, and like
yes,
or like cutting off the little ankle pieces, these little things, like you can actually cut most of it off, get like a nice straight cut, line it up with some of the other paneling, so you have to do very little.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I feel people don't realize that could be done, and with it not being that challenging.
I mean, it's still probably more than you'd want to do.
Yeah. Well, I guess in the same sense, even removing the fins from the knee pads are incredibly easy to do if you're using the multi-part ones.
Yeah, the multi-part
but
one, since the front armor plating is
like a separate, interesting piece.
a separate piece, it's really easy to do.
Like I imagine the bolter that you had already converted from him, it would have been substantially easier to do.
Yeah, because like if you look at this, the little bolter that I converted for him, let's get it to focus, right? Like it has this little like Picatinny rail at the top of it. Like I literally with an Exacto knife cut that little thin piece off of one weapon, and then cut the top of this weapon off and glued them together. But like making it semi straight and not ruining any of the pieces was like a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I feel like had I just had this little saw, it would have solved most of those issues. So one other thing that I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get to it tonight, but I think for the barrel of the weapon, I'm going to drill a hole in it and then insert a little
That's a good idea.
brass tube to make like a thinner barrel.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'll actually look a lot better. And if anyone's interested in finding some of these little brass rods, a company called Albion Alloys, they make this Albion Alloys precision metals for model makers. And in this case, they sell like little sets of brass tubing. In this case, they're slide fit, where there's a tube that's 0.3, 0.5, 0.7, and 0.9 millimeters. And so having like a range of tubings of different sizes, it's a good way to kind of just visually look at different sizes of tubing to find one that you think would work with whatever you're trying to do. Yeah, so wow, cutting off that one of those armor plates really kinda, it's removed, but like it doesn't look pretty.
Yeah. Actually, did you ever try to get one of those like KNS tube cutter things?
I tried ordering one from Amazon, but it's never arrived.
Okay.
But so actually, in many regards, if you could even just take like one of these Primaris intercessor like bolt pistols, like they were designed to like fit on like the belts of the models. Like even that, like you could largely just glue that on and it would look okay. Though I think, at least in this case for this model,
Mm-hmm.
I want to do some more work.
Seems Johnny may have found one of them at the Hobby Lobby the other day. It's good to hear.
Yeah, the tube cutter. Yeah, like I feel like if I actually went to like a store or something, I could probably find one. But even if you don't have something like that, for like brass tubing and stuff like this, if you just get a sharp Exacto blade and put it down here and like rotate, just roll the tubing, keeping the blade relatively straight, you can cut the tubing without buckling it and ruining it. So you can get by without like a specialized like cutter.
Do you like put anything in the center to help reduce the crush ability to crush it or anything? Or
It depends on how
how large it is,
how
maybe?
large the tubing is. For since some of these are so thin, and so tiny, you oftentimes don't really even need to do anything.
Yeah, okay.
So long as you're not just pressing down. If you're pressing down to cut rather than
Yeah.
rolling the brass tube, then you're gonna crush. Then you'll crush it, which you obviously don't want.
Yeah, no. Hey, Migzula just put on something on Instagram asking if people would be interested in him starting a Patreon
Interesting. Does
for
he?
like comprehensive videos and tutorials and whatnot.
Okay, so if he's actually like making tutorials and stuff like that, I feel it could be useful. Um, but I guess oftentimes with Patreon, you sort of have to ask yourself like, what? Unless you have like a clear use for like the money, like I don't know, it's really necessary.
I guess I find it a little interesting. Well, it seems like even asking the question, like, do you? I find it hard to imagine that people would say no.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, Johnny just sort of said the same thing. That if you're if you're thinking to ask that question, that means you want to, or maybe not you want to do it, but you're thinking to do it.
yeah, I mean, in many regards, like you could just do it and see how it works.
I guess maybe it's just a way to get some positive affirmation, but I don't know. I feel I don't know. I sort of feel like I'd feel a little bad asking for money for for something that I already do,
Yeah.
you know. And like in the same thing for him and Iron Sleet, they already kind of do that. I mean, I guess in all honesty, they don't really do these in-depth tutorials, although he's already done some pretty nice Instagram ones, surely
Mhm.
showing how he went about painting like a whirlwind and such in the Alpha Legion stuff.
Yeah, Johnny, you're right. Dark Tech, I think, recently started a Patreon.
Though I feel um, the Dark Tech one isn't or wasn't as clear as to why it was started, if that makes sense. Like the Migs one, it seems clear that he'd want to start to like help fund to do
Like, make
make tutorials
videos.
and stuff, and it doesn't, or I don't believe Dark Tech had suggested that. I mean, but maybe it is.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there are already tons of people on Patreon, different, like, painters and stuff, who make special tutorials about how they've painted different things, so.
But like to me, a lot of that stuff, I feel those painters and stuff are probably using it as a way for income, right? That they're trying to make a go at YouTube, making
Yeah.
videos and becoming a career or something of that nature. And like that's kind of like the artist thing, like they're needing that. Like currently I, this sort of stuff isn't a career.
Yeah. Like, his Vox mentions that, like, the 28 magazine has a Patreon. And so that it also, like, that, there are a lot of, like, potential, like, hidden costs and stuff for maintaining, like, the websites and all that other stuff. And so that also.
To host the magazines, and once you get like more a lot of downloads, like you need to have enough bandwidth, I feel. I don't know, stuff like that. So I feel it makes sense. I mean, heck, even if it was like an Iron Sleet Patreon just for website fees and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I feel you could pretty easily justify it for a lot of things. But I think as soon as you start doing some of that stuff, then there's a little more. You have to
Yeah, I
make
guess
sure you're actually doing
yeah,
stuff
it
and
depends
like,
on how committed you are. But then again, I guess Yeah, it depends on, yeah, as I was saying, how committed you are to it.
Yeah.
If he thinks if he has like, yeah, defined plan of what he'd want to do and sticks to that, all for it, I guess.
No, you're right, Johnny. Migs, he's always experimenting with different techniques, and he can get out new models and stuff pretty quickly. So, um,
And in that sense, I think people would appreciate, like, because he is often experimenting with different weathering techniques, oils, enamels, whatever. And I think people would appreciate like a quick tutorial on how to use those and how to like paint something that looks pretty nice and atmospheric, but isn't like, I'm gonna say, like a golden demon quality thing where you agonize over every little thing. And
yeah,
it's
for like 20 hours to get like.
whereas like if you're doing, I think that would perhaps have maybe a more broad appeal than, like, I'm gonna say, like Darren Latham. His stuff, like, were very detailed things, like 30-minute videos or something to like paint a purity seal, for example. And while that's certainly very useful and people like it, I don't think as many people like watch the stuff fully and like fully try to do that. Or if they do, regardless, it's harder for like Darren to make those sorts of things.
Mhm.
And it does take him a long time to make any of those videos because like painting like that Nurgle guy took him obviously a long time to paint to that standard. Whereas like Mig's painting one of his Alpha Legion guys, like they can't take nearly that long just because of the way he approaches it and sort of the atmosphere he tries to do and how he uses weathering techniques and stuff to add that additional definition to the model such that as a whole they look great and gritty, but maybe individually they're not like super fine detailed. But I mean, that's a stylistic choice and that's not something that he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is true, Vox. A lot of people have been doing the Nurgle Lord thing. I think, admittedly, that was kind of a stroke of genius on his part. That what, like I want to make some videos about painting this, but it might as well just do a very complete job and suggest people, why don't you give it a try and you can do it. If it's just like a 30-minute video, like I'm showing you how to paint a Black Templar model, like not everyone's plays Black Templar or would have much reason for doing that. But by making it kind of a project as a way to get familiar with some of his techniques and stuff, I think it opened it up a lot. Like, was just a really good idea.
And it's not hard to convince yourself, like, even like, you know what, I'll buy that model and try and paint it. Like,
Ian, meandering shade mentioning sticking with Blogger. Just because of the hassle of paying fees to be more customizable or not having ads, things like that. Like, yeah, we're still on Blogger for a little of those reasons, but I admit Blogger's kind of a pain.
they don't really support it very much anymore, right?
No, and they actually recently, at least for me, they updated like the posting feature and like the tools to add images and stuff like that, and it doesn't work well anymore. And it's made the whole process harder for me to do it.
That's bad.
And it's really like the Zaku post I just did took substantially longer to do it, to prepare everything, because Well, because of it was harder to insert the images and such, and it was like really annoying. And I guess it's because of stuff like that, it makes me wonder like maybe it would be a good idea for us to consider moving to like WordPress or something. But then again, as you sort of suggested, that's just another expense that I don't know if we really need. Sure, it's maybe more a little bit of a pain to, do the post like I was saying, but do we really need to spend another $100 here when we're already, doing it for a podcast and all these other things? So yeah, it's hard to know.
Yeah, yeah, it's a shame Darren's is like his current channel's soon going to go away because there's so much stuff on there that like um it's just
And it would
nice.
be yeah, it would be cool if they actually had him make videos for GW themselves.
Yeah.
And I feel there's a slight possibility of that. Probably not, though.
Yeah, I mean he has so
Because if they would want to do that, then they'd probably have to pay him more. you know? Whereas, like the YouTube thing, like he was literally doing that just out of the goodness of his heart.
yeah. Wow, this song's remarkably good. Makes getting rid of some of this stuff so much easier. Overall, like I sort of I like how Blogger is set up, and like I find it's pretty easy to do most things. But Eric, yeah, you were saying more recently just how you upload photos and stuff changed slightly for you, and like it
I mean,
limits.
yeah.
I think it limits the size of like the images like you could actually post and
Well, I guess, I mean, I haven't worked much with WordPress, so I don't know exactly how it works. But the way when I don't do the stuff on my phone, I use a PC. And when you go in and like create a new post, how I usually would work at it is I write the posts in Google Docs such that, Adam, Greg, they can all view the post, make edits or suggestions while I'm doing it, and I will put in the images I create directly into Google Docs to try to figure out where I want the things, write captions, things like that. And then once it's ready, I will create a new post and paste it all in there, clear the formatting, and then go in and like insert the images in there. But the way Blogger has changed now, such that when you insert images, they always insert at the bottom of the post. So you can't insert them like, oh, I want to insert this one after this paragraph or something. They all go at the bottom. And even if I'd like want to add a page break or something, the page break goes in at the bottom.
ugh.
So what it looks like I have to do now is like insert every individual element the order that it appears. Like insert an image, then insert paragraph one, insert the page break, insert image, paste in the next paragraph. And like that's very tedious.
Yeah.
When before I could just paste it all in and then insert photos directly where I want them. And that doesn't seem to work anymore. And it's kind of had trouble in the past, sometimes finicky shit not working very well. And since Google doesn't really support Blogger much, I don't think they have people working on bugs and such. So problems like that can persist for years.
Yeah, so that actually looks pretty good. So like I cut off that armor plating, and then I'll have to do a little more cutting. But if you just like
That actually does
put
works
on
pretty
these
well.
like Primaris pouches, which they were already sort of designed with this like little lip at the back to work with their more leather looking belt, like looks pretty good. I have to do a little more cutting.
Oh yeah, and also, and then I found that even after doing that arduous process of adding all the images in, once the post was live, instead of when you click on the images, instead of becoming bigger, they would then become smaller. And I couldn't find an option to like revert that and change it how it used to be.
That's not very nice.
Because before you could just insert the images into the post where you wanted them, then select the size you wanted them to appear on the page. But then if you click on them, they would appear at like the full size. But now
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to do that. Yeah, so it's aggravating. And I mean, I guess for most of my R posts or the stuff I write, I probably wax lyrically a little longer than I might have to about a lot of stuff. And the fact that for better or worse, I actually like got into the habit of writing captions for each post. Now I feel obligated to do it.
Yeah. For each image and
So
stuff, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I could maybe try to see how the process would work on doing it on my phone. But I personally find, or normally, if you have like a mouse and keyboard, I find it easier to do more precise things. But maybe with how the stuff's changed, I won't be able to do that anymore. But so yeah, it's because of issues like that. I feel where something like WordPress, there would probably be some learning curve with it. But since it's like a business, that's their business, or as far as my understanding, that's their major business thing. WordPress, like Google, they can't give a two shits about Blogger. Blogger doesn't really make much money, and so they're not going out of their way to make sure it's effective, and they're working out bugs and updating stuff to be nicer. Like they've essentially, in the 7 or 8 years we've used it, they've like updated things minorly, like once or twice. Like they just don't care about it. Whereas so I felt that some, like a specific blogging site, that's their business model, I feel would care more about it. Sort of in the same way with like a podcast, it's usually better to like, use a podcasting service that you pay some money in, like a service that's their business model is on podcast hosting, such that it's like a high quality thing.
Well, so I've removed most of the stuff. What does it look like? So those armor plates, they're now gone. At the ankles, or not the ankles, at the waist. Looks kind of awkward without having other stuff there. The knee pads, I've largely trimmed out most of the stuff there. The little ankle things are now gone. I have to do a little more cutting on this side. what time is it? So it almost took an hour and 45 minutes to do that. So that's a long time. um, hmm.
For yeah, it's a little while. I admit meandering shit. I don't know if it's called Lightbox. I'm not sure what their thing is called. But and because of it, like I try to, since they don't update it and don't care about it, like you can't even Google search the problems or even on like Reddit or something because no one uses it. It's not so, so like you do a search about this, about Blogger not working, and you get pages from like 2013 or something, so and yeah, so all of that has made me kind of think about maybe it would be worthwhile to look to transferring the blog somewhere else and maybe we could make it look more professional or something. But yeah, as I said, that's just one more thing to learn, one more expense, and one more headache of transferring everything over. So yeah.
Hey Dave. Um, Hopefully everything's going okay for you. Spent the better part of 2 hours taking this Primaris Space Marine and cutting off some of the detailing on his like ankles and knees. Totally worth it.
It'll look better in the end. Do you think you're going to do anything to his breastplate?
No.
That would be my thought. I
You
guess,
don't even see it. You won't
yeah,
see it.
that's true. Um, you could, or I mean, it could be something to consider. There's like kind of like the little gills, the little indents on the side.
Yeah.
Like maybe those could be filled in or something. Because perhaps that's somewhat of a
Yeah.
Primaris thing.
Yeah, I could consider doing that. But like, well, let's look at it. If the bolter's on there, like, you largely don't see any of that shit. I mean, I feel those little gills, like people, if you'd ask them to think about Primaris Space Marines, they don't even know they're there.
That is true. That is true. And it does add a little bit of kind of visual interest.
Yeah.
And yeah, nice to have you here, Dave.
Well, I'm trying to drill the barrel to this bolter. I hate drilling barrels to weapons.
It's terrible.
Like trying to make them such that they're sort of positions, they're
I
centered.
didn't
It's
pay
like,
too much attention. Did you start by trying to score it with the Exacto knife?
in this case, I didn't. I just slowly started. In this case, drilling with like a slightly smaller
Mm-hmm.
um invise than like I thought I wanted.
I usually try to score it slightly, but even that doesn't work. Like it's still not doesn't always work as how you hope.
Now, you scoring it a little can help, but it's often trying to center them's really hard. And then, like, I now have a much thicker pin that I'm gonna try and drill in a little bit. I'll probably.
Well, this one was also a pain. It's not the front of the barrel's not flat, right?
No.
So that's more of a pain too. But actually, Dave, you asked if the bolter is cut down. Like the bolter was cut down. Although, admittedly, that was work Adam did whenever Primaris were first released, which was a while ago.
Yeah. So now I'm drilling out the barrel and I'm making the barrel the bore too big because I'm going to try and insert a little brass tubing in there to give it a new, better looking barrel.
Actually, I might drop out of here for a second. I'm using the Blue Yeti, but I might try to set up that other microphone and see how it sounds. I think at the moment the gain might be a little low and I'll be really soft. And if that's the case, I might switch back. So I'm kind of waiting on another item to boost that.
Okay.
But I kind of wanted to just see if it is indeed um, really soft. But so yeah, I'll be back shortly.
One thing that I showed earlier, but if you look at one of the Sister of Battle bolters, they actually work pretty well with like a Space Marine. They're scaled pretty well. Um, let's see if let me actually find something. The Primaris Marines, their bolt rifles, like they're just so big. Like so if you they're so big and they're so tall. They just look ridiculous. So like while this bolter that I converted it's still huge. It's probably too big. If you compare it to the Primaris bolt rifle, it's significantly shorter. It's not as tall. The barrel is thinner. This one actually has a front and rear sight. So it's, and I also, here's a little lug that I've added for a folding stock, which in this case I haven't glued it on yet, but I have a little collapsible folding stock that will be glued on. So it also has a stock. And then we'll see about adding this barrel. And so for these like brass tubing, if you don't have like a special like tube cutter, you can typically do a pretty good job of cutting them with just an Exacto blade, and then instead of like just pressing down, you just apply a little pressure and roll the tube, and then it'll cut it without crushing the tube. The Sister Battle hands are pretty small. If you compare them to the Space Marine. But I mean, it's funny, even this Sister of Battle bolter, it itself is taller than like this one that I had converted. So let's see if... Okay, so that's probably... A little too long. But one thing, like if you want your like weapons and stuff, if you're only making a few models, adding like replacing the barrels with like brass tubing, I think can go a long way with kind of giving a nice effect. Though it is kind of a pain to do. You have to be very careful when reeling and placing everything. But it is also nice if you're using some of these the brass tubes, like particularly that Albion Alloys makes. They sell them in sets of like interlocking diameters. So in this case, like 0.3, 0.5, 0.7, and 0.9 millimeters. So you could actually slide together several different pieces of it, different diameters, to kind of modulate the bore diameter. Well, see, there we go. Like, I'll have to inset the barrel a little more, but there it's added, and a little hard to see it, but the diameter of it is much thinner or much smaller. And then you don't have to worry about painting the edge of the barrel. So if you only have a few models that you're converting, doing that with some of the barrels works pretty well. And even if you want really thin barrels, like some of these brass tubings they make, like they are so tiny. Like this one that I was using is probably one of the larger ones that I have. But so like you don't really necessarily have to worry about finding something that's too small. Hey Eric.
Hey Adam, can you hear me at all?
I can hear you just fine.
Like, is it really soft? Is it
It sounds pretty good to me. It might be a little softer.
okay? Okay. Well,
Oh, that's meandering shade. That's nice if you have a shop that's close that you can just buy all that stuff. Yeah, the pandemic's not helping now, but
yeah, no, it is not helping now.
having a shop where you can actually go to like visually see some of the stuff, I think can help a lot. Because I think for a lot of the model stuff, like some of the stuff's small enough that it's kind of hard to really know exactly what you want unless you can physically see it.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Yeah, well, this particular microphone. It's like a Rode mic dynamic microphone, and it requires a fair amount of gain. And
Yeah. Meandering Shade says that you sound clear and a touch softer, and it's true. It does sound a little better.
okay,
Or maybe I think it sounds a little better. But then again, I'm not really very.
yeah, So I did a little recording and stuff and thought it sounded um a little bit better, but haven't done anything trying to like do any equalization or anything because like ideally something could be done specifically to optimize for my voice, but I'm not an audio engineer.
Your low, gravelly voice, Eric.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, that
But
actually looks pretty good.
yeah, so I don't know. I've been trying to experiment with doing some audio stuff and trying to get it to be a little bit better. But I guess like anything else, it's there's a lot of stuff that you could learn. I guess people could mention, does it seem like this doesn't have a dedicated pop filter or anything on it? And people could mention if they hear any of like kind of like the plosive sounds.
I don't really hear that, but
Okay, well that's good. I mean, there's a windscreen on it, and supposedly the design of it, there's like a pop filter built in, but I think oftentimes those sorts of things uh aren't as good as like a dedicated one.
okay, actually, I'm gonna try and bring up this working. Oh yeah, so here are some, so it might be a little easier to see with like pictures. So like here, there I inset the barrel that I drilled in, the little brass barrel. I've not glued
Okay.
this in yet, but there, and here's another picture of the side. So
Did a pretty good job of doing that.
yeah, it's pretty, it adds, I feel, a nice level of extra detail that makes everything look a little nicer, and it's relatively easy to do. And then in some regards, even if you were trying to drill the barrel and you didn't do a great job, you could often even just remove the barrel and then just replace it with a brass tube. So even if
Yeah.
things went really bad.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
um, so yeah, that's something to consider doing if you want to spruce up the like firearms of your models.
Had there been Is there like green stuff at the juncture of where the barrel goes into the body?
Yes.
Had there always been that there? I don't feel I remembered that.
Yes, it's always been there.
Okay.
Mm. And that's something that like I sort of wonder like maybe I should, so these bolters, these Primaris rifles, these were some of the ones where they thought for whatever reason it would be a good idea to change
Oh, yeah.
where the magazine release is. So like if you look at the picture here, that little where I think you can, I don't know if you can, like right above the magazine there's this like little textured rectangle. That is what you'd pull that down to release the magazine. Typically that's situated somewhere that you could reach that with your trigger finger, and you obviously couldn't do that here. So we'll see. Maybe I'll,
Yeah, I don't know. That to me screams something that should probably be fixed.
yeah, maybe I'll change
Un-
that.
Unfortunately, but
Well, we'll see. I'll probably forget about it and not do it, but maybe I'll change it.
if the hand wasn't like where it is essentially, all the hands like honestly, I feel you could probably saw that off.
Oh, I can cut it off easily.
I guess that's true. It's so thin.
Yeah, with just an Exacto knife, and then I could like sculpt on an additional like magazine release that made more sense.
Ward Sylvania mentions that he didn't even notice. I
Yeah, so
feel, but
you'd move it to the left side. That's right, Dave. So like if you'd extend your trigger finger, you could tap it or hit it.
yeah, you'd essentially move it to um
Well,
where
like
it
if
used to be.
if you look at say yeah, the sister of battle bolters here, which I can bring one up.
You're
Let's
gonna
just
probably have to click, click or click off.
I just
Yeah,
did, I think. So there you
but
can see it has the same detailing, but it's closer. You could actually reach it with your trigger finger. So here they actually designed it properly.
you could hold them up both kind of next to each other. But so this is one of the things where it's clear that GW was just changing stuff for the sake of changing it, some of which were better, some not. Like, because otherwise, some of the changes on the Bolter were like good. Like,
Yeah.
for the Primaris Bolter, it's kind of neat that the charging handle is in line with the barrel, which that makes more sense in like an engineering
Yeah, like this
sense,
little port here is the charging handle.
where you'd like pull it back to load load the round in. Whereas in there, if it has shell casings, which sometimes bolters do, sometimes they don't, it would probably be ejected there as well. Whereas like the Sister of Battle one, the the magazine release is in the proper place, but the the charging bolt is in a pretty curious position. And I mean, maybe it could function that way, but it would be a lot of additional engineering and places that the thing could fail. So
If you look at the other side of the weapon, they don't have a magazine release on that other side. Um,
I think some of them have the at least, yes. So you can see there the sister bolters, they the charging bolt is on both sides, but the magazine release is not. But it looks like the Primaris one, the bolt isn't on both, but
yeah, and the sister of battle bolters, they have the little charging handle or the little breach that a shell
which I
might
think
go
that's
out on
cool.
both sides.
But they don't have the magazine release on both sides because they I guess they wanted that characteristic
Hmm.
bolter detail there.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just that they have gun detail on these weapons, and they put it together in different ways to look somewhat good. Not all of it was done in a way that actually makes sense.
Yeah, no, not all of it. Which I feel the Primaris, the bolt rifle, other than being fuck all huge, um, looks good. Like I think it's better. It wasn't so huge, but the the magazine release is really weird. It was just an oversight. Which is kind of a shame.
And you say, let's just whip this out, but like for fuck all huge. So like there is at least part of a bolt rifle. Like my Christ. And so this, the one in the center that I'm working on, that was cut down from one of the bolt rifles. And you'll notice, like, they actually even almost make it kind of
Yeah,
easy.
that.
There's like a clear part here where you could just saw off the front half. But
Yeah, that's not great. It's a shame we don't have the Bandai Primaris Marine yet, because I
Mhm.
feel that would be. a- I assume that model, like the CAD, the proportions and everything are the same.
Yeah. Actually, Dave, you're saying curious about some models that their bolters are wrapped in some strips of cloth or leather. I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Oh
Yeah, I'm not
yeah,
sure.
Greg ordered one of the Bandai Marines back when they were put up. So sometime we'll probably get one so we can make fun of it here on the stream.
Yeah, but I guess they haven't they haven't sent it, so I guess they must have sent out some. Like Bandai must have sent out a few, but
Hmm. Yeah.
not for everything. But yeah, wow, that because for a while I actually thought that the Bandai Marine, they made the bolters bigger, like actually bigger than the 28 millimeter scale ones, but I don't think that's actually the case. I think it's just based on the size and stuff. It looks just different.
Yeah. Well, so everyone, I think I'm gonna end this all the stream to a close. Like I have some other stuff that I still need to do tonight, and guess we've been streaming here for about 2 hours. Um, we'll hopefully hold another one relatively soon, maybe to do a little more work on this marine. But hopefully you learned at least something, or at least got to look at some different weapons and stuff for this Primaris Marine. Um, Certainly thanks everyone for coming out and chatting with us and me. It's been fun. And I guess expect to see more about this Marine in probably the coming weeks and stuff. And hopefully I'll actually end up painting the model too.
Yeah, now that I feel will be pretty fun.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks again, everybody. And we'll hopefully talk to you again soon.
Yep, see you everybody.